acknowledging that we are on the lands of Peoria, Pascagoula, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Muskegon, Odawa, South, Meskwaki, Chicopee, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. These lands are the traditional territory of those native nations prior to their forced removal. These lands continue to carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. As a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois has a particular responsibility to acknowledge the people of these lands, as well as the histories of dispossession that have allowed the institution for the past 150 years. We are also obligated to reflect on and actively address these histories and the role that this university has played in shaping them. This acknowledgement and the centering of the peoples is a start as we move forward in the next 150 years. Welcome. This semester, the University Y is excited to be partnering with Diversity Ed for the entire Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe Fall 2021 semester-long series, Unpacking Racism and Early Caring. Some quick announcements. From Diversity Ed, Diversity and Social Justice Education's annual Social Justice Awards are held in April and seek to honor unsung members of the University of Illinois campus and community who have sought to address marginalization, oppression, and the border privilege in their communities. Nominations for outstanding undergraduate students, graduate students, staff and faculty members, alumni, and registered student organizations will open later this afternoon and remain open March 4th. You can nominate yourself or someone else by visiting Diversity Ed's website. From the Y, next Thursday, November 18th, University Y will be hosting their Thanksgiving potluck from 5 to 6:30. All are welcome to gather together and share. We hope to see you there. We would also like to invite you to join us here next semester, the same time and place, for the continuation of the Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe collaboration. Both University Y and University of Illinois Diversity and Social Justice Education are putting together amazing live speakers and are looking forward to continue and have various intersections of racism. We also want to take some time to thank our sponsors for making this series possible. The Student Cultural Program League, who has provided lunch for us today. The Social Action Committee, who has started the First West Church Radio Champaign. The Women and Gender and Global Perspectives Program. Humanities Research Institute, Resources Center, Women's Resources Center, Education Justice Project, Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Office of the Provost, the Center for Global Studies, First Mennonite Church of Champaign, Urbana, Center for Advanced Study, Latina and Latino Studies, YMCA, and College of Fine and Applied Arts and more. Thank you so much. I would like to echo a thank you to our sponsors, but also the Diversity Ed on behalf of the Y for partnering with us for this entire semester. Today, I'm so happy to introduce our panelists that will be sharing with us. Each panelist will shine light on the Shamar Best face unequal justice and the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. Following the panel, there will be a few minutes for Q&A, so if you're online, please submit your questions via the chat, and we will collect them. And if you're in person, there should be a question card on your seats. If you want to jot down your question, we will periodically come through and collect those questions for the Q&A at the end. Before we dig into the panel, we have an honored guest who's going to share a poem with us. His name is Prashant Stubbs, and I would like to introduce him. He is an organizer for the First Followers Reentry Program and the Fully Free Campaign champion. Incarcerated since the young age of 19 for a total of 27 years, he is a newly released resident to Champaign. Prashant is an active leader and advocate for people directly impacted by the criminal legal system. I would like to hand it over to Prashant.
Hello, everyone. Glad you all came out. You have to excuse me, because I know why we're all here, But I'm really unsure as far as like what you expect to hear from me. You expect me to say, go Shamar, or that the feds were wrong and Shamar was right, or that he was justified in putting out some call to strike. And then I would wonder, why would you expect that from me? Simply because our skin happens to be the same tone and it's alike. Whether I was black or white, my shade cannot rewrite that what's wrong is wrong, and what's right is right. And Shamar was wrong to think that the powers that be don't care, because they do. Just for property and merchandise, not about you. Young lad who's now prison uniform clad, for crossing all the lines like flag, sentenced to a steel slab, and fined for far more than what he grabbed. He was given a deal as big as a hill. Just so I heard about it, put it on the tab. Then I guess in jest, they gave him years of rest for hours of unrest. Is that unjust? Some will say no, he's better off. He knew the difference between anger and danger was only one better off. Plus, he set it off. Really? Are you that distraught that you don't reflect off and realize that it wasn't some post that sent you into the streets, feeling the opposite of peace? But the daily release of videos that show an existence threatening increase of police calls in the lives to cease. That's why they rose like peace. And that's why they want that fact, like Rosa, to take a vaccine. Under the threat of COVID-19, he was only 19, and yet over 19, as some madman went wild in this adult world where a child can make a post to become a poster child and a scapegoat. But take note how they wrote him off as a dissident. Well, I'm still trying to figure out what's the difference between him and our last president. One, they say it's either right on the marketplace mall that led to a loss of capital. The other, they say, incited a riot on the national mall that led to a loss of the capital. One they make excuses for and give a pass. Dismiss that police just a pass. Who speaks off the cuff? Yes, they're innocent. His remarks had to take aim. Yeah, well, no rebuff. The other, they actually hunted and tracked before the sun's gone, with guns drawn. So hey, crawl out there on the front lawn to be done wrong like a spun poem until the two people's up drawn. The gavel hit. Now that's one gone. If it wasn't so sad, it'd be enough to make one gone out of exhaustion, drained, and tired of this double standard. And so panic. And the struggle for an answer of why. Why? Are you serious? Did you not see and hear this kid bragging and happy to claim credit for it all? I'm appalled. Well, you shouldn't be appalled. But which one? Silent or revealed? Because it's clear. You didn't actually listen nor hear. He wasn't boasting. He was disclosing his shock and his awe. Hey, wow. as a young black man, my words weren't even heard at all. Like, I can't believe this. I'm usually ignored and dismissed. But wow, I did this. And I did it without being jealous. They finally saw me, Ellison. I'm not an invisible man, but yet I still try to understand how my little words can move people to a location and act out and demand their respect. But George Floyd's words of "I can't breathe" weren't enough to move a cop's knee off his neck. I mean, what the heck? What do you expect? And what did we learn from this mess? The black bodies are worthless and all objects? Well, I object and suspect that when Shamar was moved, he was probably confused, stepping off a prison bus shackled in tubes, doomed to steal catacombs, scared and alone for numbers of winters and summers. I guess for black folks, it is different strokes. I'm Mr. Drummond. So for one, Mr. Drummond up a ride beat for people to meet in the streets on Facebook, yet Shamar became the flex of having a book thrown at him until they took his brain for the win. But if I was him, wait a minute, I was him. In fact, at the very age of 19, I walked a mile green, but was quite keen on not letting them whack me or distract me with the book that they threw at me. Instead, I cut that book. I opened it and read it line for line, page by page, till I emerged from engaged to fully engaged. Exhumed from a brick cocoon with wings that bloom and demanded from the world, give me home. Thus, I know it feels far, but trust, you will be home soon. So in the interim, prepare for your release. Make the necessary tweaks. And from henceforward, always reach out for peace. As George did with his last breath, when he cried out for his mother, who was on another planet. And as I imagine every night in your city, you now understand. Just wishing to be an innocent child after his mama went. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prashant, for sharing your poem with us. Can we give her another round of applause, please? We will now transition to the panel, and I will give brief intros for each of the panelists, but I also encourage you all to introduce yourselves. So let's get started. So to begin, we have Savannah Donovan, who met Shamar in April of 2019, and she hired him as a youth program leader. She is an environmental educator, climate activist, and mother of 3 young children. She has been a friend and mentor to Shamar and testified on Shamar's behalf in federal court. Next to her is Elizabeth Paul, who is an assistant federal public defender for the Central District of Illinois, responsible for the representation of indigent clients within the district's jurisdiction. She works with defendants charged with a variety of offenses, from firearms to fraud to controlled substances, and is certified to represent defendants in capital cases where the government is seeking the death penalty. Prior to joining the FPD in 2012, Elizabeth worked for 6 years as a general practice attorney at the Glover PC in Urbana, Illinois, handling a variety of cases in the areas of civil litigation, state and federal criminal Brian Dollar is currently managing editor of Prison Legal News. His articles have appeared at Enemies Times, The Progressive, Truth Out, and Counter Punch. He is the author of the Black Cultural Front, Black Writers and Artists of the Depression Generation, and editor of the Negro Herald, the WPA papers. He has taught history and African American studies at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I would like to thank each of our panelists for being here and invite them now to share their personal, legal, and political perspectives in order to give background and deepen understanding of who Shamar Best is and what has happened and is happening with this local case.
Thank you. My name is Pamela Donovan. I met Shamar when he was 18 years old. And he was pretty fresh out of high school. He was looking for his first job. And for a person of the age of 18, I was very impressed with him. He told me about how he didn't have a lot of formal experience working with children, but he told me about his little sister. He told me about how he led a chess club in high school. At that point, I had no concept of the challenges that Shamar had faced, of all of the effort that he had put into just being able to get this interview with me sitting in my office. I thought he had a lot of potential. I know he still does. So I hired him to be a camp counselor. And as we started our training, I could see that he was very intelligent, very kind. As the summer went on, children and his coworkers absolutely fell in love with him. He made a lot of connections. We saw Shamar walking to and from work. He would walk miles a day because he didn't have transportation. I would see him hungry. He didn't have money for food. At the end of the summer, he was facing homelessness. He had no place to live. So I started to connect with him in a deeper way. No longer just his boss at work. I wanted to help him to get on his feet. So I started mentoring him. Just the kind of basics, let's get you on food stamps. How do we get Medicare? How do he has some health conditions that have gone unaddressed for years. The more I got to know him, the more he trusted me and told me about his history, I just began to understand that he has faced one hurdle after another. Shamar had what he describes to me as a pretty good life until he was about 12 years old. His mother had a successful career. She took excellent care of Shamar, his older brother, his younger sister. When she passed away in 2013, when Shamar was just 12 years old. And I believe it's from that point that his life started to crumble. He lost the most important person to him, the person who was going to love him and care for him unconditionally. And think about what that means when you're left to float around in space alone. He was moved from one family member's house to another, separated from his siblings at times. It wasn't easy for him. I'll also mention in the midst of this, at one time he was living in Chicago. I believe he was in middle school when he watched a friend of his gunned down by a police officer. He had other incidents with police where he was targeted just for being a Black man. I heard some of these stories. But he persisted, he always kept his head up, he always wanted to learn more, do better. He fell in love with working with children. His dream was to be himself a mentor to others someday, to help children in need as he had needed help as a child. I felt he was on a strong path towards that. We were looking at if he was eligible for Pell Grants, if he was going to be able to start school at Parkland College. We were making some progress. He really wanted to start his formal education and be able to have a career working with youth. So, after having watched him struggle through food security, homelessness, all of this, COVID-19. Shamar lost both part-time jobs that he had, just laid off because of COVID. We no longer bringing children in. There's no job for him. So he sat alone in his apartment. And he and I would talk on the phone occasionally. At first, during COVID, too scared to meet each other in person. He asked me, should I move somewhere? I have family in Chicago, I have some family in Mississippi, but I don't like Chicago. I don't want to live there. I don't like Mississippi. I don't want to live there either. He felt at home in Atlanta. He really wanted to stay here. So that was in March. In April was the 7th anniversary of his mother's death. And he was really struggling financially, emotionally, mentally. And then George Floyd's murder. Shamar was feeling hopeless, distraught, very depressed, didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. And so he made a call to action on Facebook for people to gather at Marketplace Mall. How many of us have made a post on Facebook that we regretted making? How many of us have impulsively said something or done something because we felt such anger, such despair? But there was no going back from this mistake. Other people saw the post, it caught fire. And was that because he was asking people to do something and they thought, oh, we should all listen to this 19-year-old kid? What a great idea. No, people listened to him because they were feeling despair also. They were feeling distraught. Shamar's biggest mistake was putting a date, time, and location for people to gather. Because they did. They did what he asked them to. And the rest is, I suppose, history. I'm still in touch with Shamar quite often. I spoke with him today. He was recently moved from Macon County Jail. He is in a temporary holding facility in Oklahoma right now, and he's awaiting his move to a prison in West Virginia. So none of us know the specifics on where he's going yet. We have built a website for Shamar. It's a depot where you can go to find articles about his case. You can find out how to offer him support. Right now, there is a GoFundMe. You can donate money. The money that we're collecting will be used for education programs while he's in prison. He loves to read, so he asks for books. He loves it when people send him books. He loves to draw and write letters. He's very happy to get pen pals. So in a few weeks, when he's relocated to West Virginia, we will be able to fill in the missing pieces on that website and give all of you an opportunity to write him a letter sent him a book. Donate money if you would like. And so we do have a sign-up sheet here with us today. We'll pass that around at the end of the seminar today. I think that's it for me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Liz Pollock, and I'm a federal public defender in Oregon. I was assigned to Schwartz's case when he was charged with one count of violating the Anti-Riot Act of 1968. So, interestingly enough, meeting him in court was not the first time that I have ever met Schwartz. My children attend the camp where he was the counselor, and he was my son's favorite counselor. So I had some familiarity with him before I was assigned to the case, which often happens in this town because I've lived in Urbana for 40 years now. So just a little bit of background, I want to take you through the legal developments of his case and what the current status is now. The background on the Anti-Riot Act, I said it was passed in 1968. The legislative history of the statute indicates that it was a direct response to the protest movement of the civil rights movement that happened in the 60s. Congress was getting tired of large groups of people gathering in large cities and causing problems. So the response was to pass this statute, which criminalized the use of interstate commerce in furtherance of a riot, and it defined what a riot was. The Anti-Riot Act has hardly been used since the 60s. The most famous case that exists in our circuit is United States versus Dellinger, which is commonly known as the trial of the Chicago 7. So the last appellate court decision that references anything about the Anti-Riot Act is from 1972. In fact, it is so rarely used that in federal court we have something called the sentencing guidelines. Sentences come from two places. It comes from the statute, which prescribes the minimum and maximum term allowed by law for prison. And it comes from the sentencing guidelines. And the guidelines are supposed to group people together, similar offenses, similar criminal histories, and it prescribes a range of months that each crime is subjected to based on the person. The Anti-Riot Act is the only statute I have ever come across in 10 years which does not even have a guideline because it is so rarely used that no guideline is ever promulgated to address it. So when he was charged, initially he had gone to Mississippi. I think that he realized after the post went viral and the event in the marketplace exploded into hours and hours of people damaging property and getting into arguments with police officers, etc., although nobody was ever hurt physically. He thought it would be better for him to hang out with family in Mississippi and calm down for a while. Well, the feds found him there. They arrested him on the arrest warrant and brought him back to this district where I met him in court. We initially filed multiple motions to dismiss the indictment based on the unconstitutionality of the Anti-Riot Act. The Riot Act can, I believe, encompass legal protected First Amendment speech. And when a statute is overbroad, it says one group of things is bad and you're not allowed to do them, but it can also chill protected speech under the First Amendment. And we filed 50, 60, 70 pages of briefs on multiple issues to try to get the district court to dismiss the indictment because it was unconstitutional. We knew we would lose that because the current state of the law in the Seventh Circuit is the Dellinger case from the 70s. And the Dellinger case found that the statute was constitutional. But we have some hope that there may be some movement on that issue in the future. There are other appeals pending in other federal circuit courts of appeal across the country, which have found pieces of the Anti-Riot Act to be unconstitutional. There are cases in the Fourth Circuit, which is the Carolinas, and the Ninth Circuit, which is California, and now we have to wait our turn to go to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which sits in Chicago. So the motions were unsuccessful. At which point, we knew that all our hopes would be hinged upon the appeal process in Shamar's case. So he entered a plea of guilty to 1 count. And we waited for his sentencing hearing to begin. In his case, he has no prior criminal convictions ever. So he is a criminal history category of 1 under the United States sentencing guidelines. We got into several arguments with the government about what the appropriate sentencing range should be for Shamar. And the government asked the court that even though the Riot Act has no guideline, they wanted the court to treat him as if he had committed an offense against property. The reason they wanted the court to treat him like that is because if it's a property crime, your guidelines range is based on the total amount of loss, the amount of property damage that occurred. And in this case, the government had gathered statements from businesses at the Marketplace Mall and on our prospect that indicated that the damage was over $2.5 million. So because they attributed all of the dollar amounts to Shamar personally, they wanted the guidelines range to be in excess of the statutory maximum. The most time he could have ever been sentenced to under the Riot Act was 5 years. The government asked for the maximum sentence in all aspects. They wanted a 5-year prison sentence to be followed by 3 years of mandatory supervised release, which is also the maximum allowed under the law. And they wanted him to be held personally accountable for every single dollar of damage that occurred in the entire Champaign community on that day. We had very heated battles with the prosecution over the sentencing ranges on all of these various issues. And the fact is that we lost most of them. The court did apply the guideline that is affiliated with property damage and loss. The court did find that restitution should be mandatory and not discretionary. The court did find Shamar personally responsible for $1.6 million, which is now the final restitution judgment, which he is responsible for paying when he is released from prison. For the term of restitution, the government will take 50% of his income until he pays it off. He was sentenced to 4 years in the Bureau of Prisons. Thank God, we got the court to give him credit for the time that he had served in state pretrial detention, because he was also charged not only with violation of the Anti-Riot Act, but a violation of the Illinois State burglary statute in Champaign County Circuit Court. The prosecutor in that case asked for, I believe, 4 years, and he received a sentence of time served, which is 12 months approximately. But what that meant, because of the way that the Federal Bureau of Prisons calculates the good time credit, he would not have received credit for that 12 months, so we would have had to do 4 plus the 1. And we got the court to credit him at least for 1 year. So his total federal sentence is 36 months, which will begin from the date that he came into federal custody after the state case was resolved. So right now, we have an appeal pending in the Second Circuit. That is in briefing right now, and we'll likely have results on the year. The issues on appeal include what we believe would be the inappropriate application of the sentencing guidelines range, the inappropriate application of the Mandatory Victim Restitution Act as opposed to the discretionary restitution, as well as the length of the sentence that he received. Those issues are in briefing, and we'll be putting updates on the website as we get further in that process. He is now subject to the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. As Savannah said, I think he's going to a medium security facility in West Virginia. He is on the way, but that transportation process can take several months. In the meantime, he'll be shuffled around different counties until they get a plane flight that will get him to his ultimate destination. So to keep track of him and to keep track of ways that you can help him, we're going to pass around a sheet for email addresses. You can subscribe to the website, and we'll be keeping everybody ready to go with that. Thank you.
I'm Brandon. Thanks everybody for coming. It's amazing to see people out on this pandemic. It's been really crazy trying to organize something during the pandemic.
So I want to thank Pat Simpson, my friend, who helped to make this the connection with the YMCA. And we want to thank Michelle for videotaping, Elizabeth and Cynthia for hosting us at the Y. You know, I was with my kid watching what's going on my laptop on Prospect when this all went down, you know. And I heard about this kid from our pets who was running from the law, and in Mississippi, you're trying to find him. For like, you know, there were people in the local jail, we got a couple dozen people who got locked up, and so, you know, there were efforts to bail them out. You know, we're like talking to people in Chicago, the Chicago Community Bond Fund. How do we find this smart pets kid and get him out? You know, once he was finally in custody and he had no bail. We could bail him out. And so we just kind of sat and watched, you know, as this all unfurled, you know. And I just had the sense that there was major crime going down. Major crime at the federal courthouse. And, you know, so, you know, the months dragged on. I know Liz, because our kids play together, and, you know, we work on some immigration stuff, and I met Savannah through Friends of Friends, and so it was like, you know, so finally the court dates rolled around, and I went to set a few court dates and put out a call, and there was like a dozen or 15 people who showed up for one case. For the sentencing, there was like maybe 5 people in the room. It was like nobody was watching what was going on. It's major crime going down at the federal courthouse, you know. So I just like, you know, watching what was going on, just in this pandemic, trying to figure out how to organize. Because I'm not political organized, I'm community organized, that's what I do. So I was just like, what are we gonna do? And my buddy Sean just got out, and I was like, you know, we need to get something together. So so this is the panel we got together today. I don't know what the hell I was gonna say, but it's been so emotional watching this all go down the last year, you know. So you know, I sat in the federal courthouse, and you know, watched these cops get up on the stand, FBI agents. They had this big booklet, like this big 3-ring binder. They had all Shamar's messages, texts, Facebook Messenger account, and the guy just sat in the room just reading, you know, with this 19-year-old black kid was telling his friends, like, I'm a legend, I set this off, you know, and like to some degree he is a legend, you know, because you know, we all watched what was going on, and it was outrageous, you know. And you know what happened on North Prospect is crazy, and they tore some stuff up, but that is the voice of rage and the youth that we understand. That's the last straw that couldn't take it anymore. So I watched these agents, FBI agents get on and talking about WTF, and they have to explain to one another what WTF means. You know, it's these 19-year-old black kids. And it was just a farce, you know, it was ridiculous. Fundamentally, what it was about is that, you know, these black youth can get a social media account, Facebook media account, and tell people to go to North Prospect on a Sunday at 4 o'clock. And they hit them all up. They hit them all up. And they had a lot of cops out there, they had helicopters, they had, everybody remembers what that night was like. I remember watching. And so, you know, just that one 19-year-old kid could assemble that. I'm a political organizer. I could not get that together. You know? But this one 19-year-old kid with Facebook can't do that. And that scares the authorities. That scares the government. That scares the feds. You know, so that's why they want to come down on so hard. $1.6 million restitution. Even more than 4 years of penitentiary. You know, that kind of restitution, which was, to my understanding, totally unprecedented. And the way in which I saw those agents get up on stand and read through all the, they had gone to all the businesses in town. Everybody got a cracked window, you know, some spray paint, you know, broken lock, you know, anything. And they counted all the dollar amounts and tried to pin that on Shamar. The extent to which they went to to do that, just show me how important this case was and what Shamar did and what the way she's, you know, scares that it's, you know, some of they burned down a whole police station in Minneapolis. It's not happening. They don't stop. So that's what I want to say about Shamar's case. I also want to make a brief piece about, you know, we're coming out of this pandemic because organized, you know. In town here, they just are passing through license plate readers to what's going on in town. People are organizing against it. And there's some debate about in the community about that. They're trying to build our Champaign County Jail. They want to spend $5 billion of COVID money, COVID relief money. They want to spend it on jail cells. This is happening in front of the county board on Thursday night. Folks are going to be approving this. It's being spearheaded by, you know, some of my friends in the Democratic Party. I'm sad to say, people who are supposed to go to progressive want to spend $5 million of COVID money on jail cells. So that is totally unacceptable and totally connected with what happens from our and the system that we cannot seem to get rid of in the United States, which is mass incarceration and prison police state or racist peace that we have here in the United States. So you can talk with me about opposition to the county jail. There's other folks in the room also working on that. But you know, Shamar's going to get out in 2023, be back in our community. While he's in, he needs, like, you know, those phone calls I think are expensive. They cost money, money on his commissary account just to get something to eat. We're going to be raising funds. We have a website. We're going to be providing support. You know, like I'll write Shamar a letter for Christmas, you know, to say, hey, introduce myself. You know, so I have one of those, a big bowl that we pass around, and we have a sign-up sheet that we're going to pass around. And thanks to everybody for being here. Questions?
For those of you who are online or in the room and you want to write down the web address, it is supportshamarvets.wixsite.com/ShamarVets. And I'm going to pass this around. If you are joining online, maybe it's possible for you to send your email address.
Thank you so much. So we'll be passing both the sign-up sheet around and then also the form. And then we'll transition into the Q&A from questions from our audience, and I'll kind of hand the microphone to the panelists, and they will choose whether you would like to respond or not to each question. The first question is, how do prosecutors justify charges on with the Riot Act in 2020 America, especially when now acknowledged as an attack on the civil rights movement?
I suppose that one's for me. Well, if you listen to any portion of the arguments that the prosecution made in Shamar's sentencing hearing, the prosecutors fully believe that this was absolutely, and I believe it was said in court, the worst attack on our community in history. And that it needed to be drastically punished as a deterrent to others who would engage in similar behavior. Now, I will just point out, I'm trying not to get too hot on the collar here, and I will say that what I am saying here today is my belief. I do not represent my office or my office's beliefs in this. But I have seen the Anti-Riot Act deployed in various jurisdictions over the last 2 years. One of the reasons I brought this up in court, why I thought those sentencing requests here was just so nuts, was there were 2 white supremacists who were part of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. They had organized intentionally to cross state lines and assault counter-protesters. They did, in fact, assault counter-protesters. There was person-to-person violence at that riot. They were charged with the Anti-Riot Act. They received sentences of 27 and 33 months respectively, just under 3 years. So they received less time than Shamar did when Shamar's case did not involve any personal attacks. or damage to a body, to property, and apparently in that jurisdiction, you can beat the shit out of each other and get 2 years, and that is the amount of people in that district at this time. So the Anti-Riot Act is a valid piece of legislation and has been upheld as constitutional in multiple jurisdictions. So it is a tool in the prosecutorial toolbox that they chose to deploy in this particular case. And that's why they can still use it, because no court has yet deemed it to be unconstitutional. I will also state that the Anti-Riot Act involves interstate commerce. It's the only way the federal government can prosecute a case is if there is an element concerning interstate commerce, because if it's intrastate, if it's inside your state, it's supposed to be the state's problem. But in this case, you know, people in the Sellers case, which was the United Right rally, they came to California, they drove multiple countries to get there. They crossed state lines. Shamar Betts used a phone, and the phone is the element of interstate commerce because it uses the internet. And the internet is now the primary basis for establishing federal jurisdiction in most cases, because it has expanded the authority of the federal government. Whenever a phone or computer is used, it becomes a federal crime. And now I honestly don't really think of very many crimes that can be committed just in state court anymore. Usually there is a way for the federal government to assert itself by utilizing the interstate commerce element, and in this case, it was used itself.
Thank you. This next comment starts with, thank you for your advocacy. In your view, what is Shamar a scapegoat for? What is his arrest and criminalization of cover for? What is the goal here in relation to white supremacy and power? I'm going to hear that with an additional question. What is Shamar for white? I answer this one.
That is a perfect example of what a scapegoat is. It's just when you may want to wrap off because I don't want to expect it. But just in short, what I remember was what if he was white? Well, you know the answer to that. I mean, this country has a history of white people doing this. And they just give them a fine, in cages, you know. So instead of looking at it like, what if he was white? Why don't we just do this? They gave him a 1.6 million bill, right? What was that for? That was for damage, right? But the same people are part of the system who actually did damage to black bodies are not forced to pay any of that. And then how do you measure how much someone's life is worth? If you rattle off the list of all the names that they've done damage to, they're not sentenced to pay 1.6 million. They're not even 0.6 because it's not valuable. They don't deem, unfortunately, black people as worthy or worth value. But you turn that back around and you do a crime that is shared, all of a sudden that becomes far more valuable than a life. So what message do I extend to you? What message do I extend to you? And that's my answer.
I just want to invite people to read the Public Eye newspaper, and there are 3 articles in the Public Eye by Janice Jays. I hope she's watching on TV, but Janice is in Turkey right now on a Fulbright scholarship. And she reported on the case, really brilliant coverage by Janice. Where are copies of the newspaper? Pick up copies of read about, or Janice actually stated the issue directly, and ultimately it's about the control of black bodies through the prison state system.
And if you're interested in seeing, the racial disparity, check out the cases involving the traffic rioters. The people who've been arrested, I think there was a sentencing just the other day of an intentional assault on a police officer. And that person got 41 months in prison, which is less time than she was.
And I just want to add that the $1.6 million restitution, that's a life sentence. Shamar has been sentenced to a lifetime of poverty.
Thank you for those responses. And I want to thank all of the audience members that have submitted your questions. We're going to keep going, but there are too many for the amount of time that we have left. So apologies if we don't get to your question. Maybe some of the panelists will hang around after if you want to have a conversation. So going off of the 1.6, the next question is, so what sentence and crime do you think Shamar should have been charged with? I personally think it should just be for the damage and theft he committed. 1.6 million is absurd.
And I agree with that. I think he should have been charged with, he did obviously participate in some of the goings on at Marketplace Mall. There are videos of this happening. It's undisputable. He did participate, and yes, I do think he should have been held responsible for that. But the bigger picture is the message that he was trying to convey. What was the meaning behind gathering? He was trying to open people's eyes.
He already got that sentence. He's got the appropriate sentence already. He was charged in the state court with appropriate, which is a separate count for conduct which he committed. And there is a program that Champaign County has called the Second Chance Program for first-time offenders who commit a crime. They are given the opportunity to earn the dismissal of that conviction, to retroactively drop that case if they comply with special terms of probation. That was not offered in Shamar's case. It requires the consent of both the defense counsel and the prosecutor's office to receive that. It was not offered, so it could not be done. But this, in my opinion, is a state court crime, and he was charged already in state court for that.
I believe in reparations.
Yeah, that he would personally be held responsible for whatever act that he committed. I mean, I don't know on what planet where if you go into a 7-Eleven and steal a candy bar, I'm held responsible for what you did. That's ridiculous, you know what I mean? So if he took something, he needs to take that back, which leads to what Brian said, it's called reparations. I hit you, I harm you, I pay back for the harm.
Next question. Going forward, can/will the 1968 law be used more forcefully against youth protesting the new hockey arena and the yards project?
Short answer is yes. The way that it is being construed to include not only interstate movement of people, but intrastate movement of people. So you use a cell phone, you get it.
I'm going to struggle a little bit with this one, but it's kind of hard. But for the attorney, this case in some ways is similar to legal responses around the country. Is there a way to draw attention to this Trump Justice Department? No excuse for current department.
I think that delves a little bit into the political sphere, which is not something that I engage in. We deal with the Department of Justice that is given to us with every administration. Policies change left and right. One of the things that is always very interesting is when it's a Republican administration, notices of intent to seek the death penalty skyrocket. With the Democratic administration, they drop. Each department has its own policies that they follow, and it is part of the executive branch, so if you don't like what happened, vote.
I talked to Matt McLaughlin this morning at the Chicago Community Bond Fund. He said that he and others in Chicago had sent a letter to the Biden administration when they came into office, asking to review these cases like Shamar and others resulting from the Black Lives Matter protest post George Floyd. And the Biden administration did not review or reverse any of those cases.
All right, thank you so much. We truly appreciate the perspectives that were shared today from the panel to educate the community and campus about Shamar Betts, a fellow community member. We want to thank everyone who was present here today in this room, whether virtually or in person. And for the last 8 Fridays of the series, we encourage you to join us again next semester. And also just a huge shout out to our sponsors that made this semester possible. With that, we are going to close. Thank you so much for being here today. And again, if you have additional questions, perhaps you can snag one of the panelists before they head out. Thank you.